In today's session, as I told you yesterday about SRS, that is software requirement documentation, okay, which is also called as a requirement document, isn't it? So today we are going to see the structure, okay. I'll explain you about the structure, okay, the structure of requirement document. So as this question may be asked in the examination for 10 marks, so you have to write down the structure and explain it, okay. And if you explain all correctly, you will get 10 out of 10 marks, right? So there are chances of getting the 10 marks here. All right. So in this document structure, okay, so in this document structure, we have a standard format, okay, which includes preface, introduction, glossary, requirement definition, system architecture, system requirement specification, system models, system evolution, appendix and index. Okay, so these are the main contents of that document, right? So you have seen your seniors doing the project. So where the binding is done in the form of a black book, isn't it? So these are the contents of that black color book. So after completion of your project, you have to submit one documentation with the binding, okay, black color book. That is nothing but SRS. It is a software requirement specification, as well as it is also called as a software requirement documentation. So in that you are going to include these contents. Okay, these are the contents which are included in that black book. So let us see one by one. So according to these contents, the explanation is given here, right? So preface, what does preface consist of? This should define the expected readership of the document and describe its version history, including a rationale. Okay, so I think there was a network issue. I have reconnected. Is the screen visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I was telling you about the first content, that is nothing but what? Preface. Okay. So do you know what is preface? Anyone? So preface is included to provide information to the user. Okay. So preface, it is included to provide information to the user. So by reading that, user will come to know about the software versions and what are the changes that had been made in the old versions. So preface is nothing but briefing. So it will provide you a small briefing. Okay. So preface will provide you a small briefing, okay, about the software that has been created. Fine. Now, so what is next one? Next one is introduction. Okay. So in introduction, as you usually know, it will tell you about the software. Okay. The needs for the system. It will also briefly describe the functionality of the system, how the software is going to work, and what are the main objectives of creating the software. So in introduction, you have to tell about your software, right? So what is exactly the purpose of creating the software? And you also should inform that what are the new things that are being included in your software, which are not there in the existing old software. So in introduction, you have to give a brief information about your software, how your software is going to work, and what are the advantages of your new software, right? and how it is going to meet all the objectives and requirements of the customer. So all those details are included in the introduction. Okay, so that is the second content. Then the third content is glossary. Okay, so you all know what is the glossary, isn't it? It is just like uh, a small page of a dictionary where you include technical terms and meaning of the technical term. So few technical terms which you are using in your documentation and their meanings, okay, their meanings you can include in one page. That is called as what? Glossary. Okay, so glossary is all about what? Explaining the technical terms that you have included in your document. Okay, so that is called as what? Uh, Glossary. Fine. Okay. Then the next term is called as user requirement definition. So you all know what is a user requirement, isn't it? So we have two types of requirements. One is a user requirement and another is a system requirement. So user requirement is all about the information that is being provided by the user in a simple statement, isn't it? So user always tells us his requirements in a simple language, in a natural language. So it depends upon a developer to take those user requirements and design the system requirements for the user requirements, isn't it? So basically the user requirements, okay, they may be any natural language or they may in the form of a diagrams, notations, okay, which are understandable to the customer, right? So user requirement definition is nothing but what? You have to properly define, okay, the requirements that are being described by the user, okay. Fine. So the next is system architecture. Okay, so what is system architecture? So system architecture is all about finalizing the hardware and software requirements of your software. Okay, finalizing the hardware, what things are going to be included in the hardware and what are the part of a software, right? So architectural compute, see in this they have given a small briefing saying that distribution of functions across the modules. Okay, so I have told you like some softwares or basically many softwares works in the form of modularity approach. What is modularity approach? Designing or developing the software in the modules, okay, dividing the functionality into the modules and then combining all the modules to form a one system. Okay, so here in this system architecture, they are going to follow all those approaches, right? Okay, so this is the continued index. Then we have system requirement specification. Okay, yeah. So here we have system architecture, right? Finalizing the architecture. Then system requirement specification. So here you are going to find out the functionality of the software. So how many modules you are going to create, then how many interfaces you are going to create, what type of coding you are going to write. Okay. So basically here it includes the coding part, right? Coding, and it also includes some part of designing the interfaces, right? So that comes under system requirement specification. All right. Okay. So what is the next content of SRS? The next content of SRS is system models. Okay. So in system models, so as you know, what is a model? Model is nothing but what? Diagrammatic representation of the software. Okay, so models are nothing but what? Diagrammatic representation of software. So we use different types of models. Okay, we use different types of models, right? So this might include graphical system models showing the relationship between the system components and the system and its environment. Okay, so what is this exactly? With the help of the model, we will come to know, okay, how the processes are working in your software and how the data flows from one process to another process. So system models is just like flowchart. As I've told you, system models are just like flowchart. So what is flowchart? Flowchart will tell us how the data flows through the program. Similarly, the system model will help us to understand the flow. Okay, the system models will help us to understand the flow of data. Okay, system models. It will tell us how one process is related to another process and how the data flows from one process to another process, right? Yeah. So next is system evolution. Okay. So what is system evolution? Do you remember? This I have told you in the first unit. Yes. System evolution is all about what? Updating your system or updating your software. So basically, once when your software is ready and you install this software into the customer's desktop, okay, so what is going to happen there? Next thing is that you have to take care of maintenance of your software. So you have to take care of the maintenance of your software. Okay, so this maintenance is carried out, okay, basically depending upon the requirement of the customer. So system evolution is all about the maintenance and updating the software. Okay, is it clear? So this should describe the fundamental assumptions on which the system is based and any anticipated changes due to hardware evolution. Okay, changing user needs and so on. So evolution is carried out when we need to change any part of a hardware or when we want to update any user needs. All right, okay. Last is appendix. So this should provide detailed information that is related to application developed. For example, like hardware and database descriptions. Okay. So appendices will tell you overall some technical things that are being used in your software. Okay. It will provide you information about hardware, databases. It will also provide you information about the configuration of the system. All these details are included in this header. Okay. So last we have index, right? So as you all know that index plays very important role to find out that which data is available on which page. Okay, so this is the main structure of that black book. The black book, which you can see is being used in project. Okay, so you have seen your seniors carrying that black book. So what is that black book? That black book is nothing but what? SRS only. Okay, so in that document, you have to create all these contents. So you have to include all this data in that document. Okay, so under system architecture you have to show hardware and software requirements. What are the hardware and software that you are going to use? Under user requirement you have to state the user problems. Okay, then in system requirement specification you have to show the coding section and you have to tell about what type of coding is being used, what type of interfaces are used in order to develop that software. So in system model section, you have to draw some diagrams like data flow diagrams, ER diagrams, okay, object models. You have to also draw some diagrams like state flow diagrams, all these kinds of diagrams you have to draw under this category, that is system model. So in system models, what is used there? Different types of models are created to show the working of a software. So after all these things, see, the testing part also comes here in the system requirement specification only. You have to show some section of testing in the system requirement specification only. Okay, so what happens in appendices? All the technical information, technical terms, okay, what type of hardware and what type of software, what type of databases you are going to use, all these details are shown in the appendices, right? Then we have index. So in index, you are going to show which diagram is on which page and every detailing that what data is available on which page. That is basically included under index. Okay. So when this question is asked for you for 10 marks, that explain the structure of a requirement document, or they may ask you explain software requirement specification, or they may ask you explain the format. So this is the thing which you have to write. So just point out these main contents. Okay. So this is the basic structure which will be asked for 10 marks, right? Okay. Now, so there are different ways of writing this documentation. Okay, there are different ways of writing the documentation. Yeah, so one way is a natural language. Okay, another is a structured natural language, design description languages, graphical notations, and mathematical specifications. So there are different ways of writing this document. Okay, so somebody can write it in the paragraph format, isn't it? Or somebody can write the same data in the paragraph format, or somebody may write in using mathematical notations. Somebody may include coding, somebody may include only designing, isn't it? So there are different ways of writing or framing the data here, right? So we have different types of ways when we want to create that document, right? So one way, that is first way, is a natural language. Okay. So here, just I'm talking to you, like suppose I want to complete my requirement phase. So in requirements, I can state like that, the user requirements are collected from 5 different domains, and then the requirements are sorted and finalized, and then we came to a final decision to go with .NET software or .NET web application. So this is a natural way, okay, of telling or sharing the information. Which is explained in a more natural way. So that SRS can be conducted in the form of a natural language. It can be more structured. Okay, so structured means what? It is having one format, isn't it? So there is one standard way of explaining something. So natural language, suppose I tell you to write one letter. Suppose I tell you to write one letter saying that application for providing my 10th standard marks card. Application for providing my 10th standard marks card. Okay. So what is this? This is one application. You can write it in your own language, which is called as a natural language also. And you can follow one structured format. Like first you have to write to, and then you have to write from, and then you have to write the content, date, signature. So that becomes more structured, isn't it? So that is the difference between natural language and structured natural language. So natural language can be written in an easygoing way without any specific format. But when you are using a structured natural language, what you have to do? You have to follow a standard format of writing the requirements. Okay? Yes. Then we can also go with the design language, right? Suppose I'll give you the best example for design language. Okay, suppose your teacher is explaining in the class, and what you people are doing, right? So suppose your teacher is explaining in the class, right? And what you're doing there, you're taking a book and you're writing something saying that, okay, the teacher is explaining nicely, or you're telling that the teacher is not explaining nicely, isn't it? So you're going to write something. So that is a design language. So a language where you're going to write what? Some designs. Are you getting that? So in design description language, what you're going to use? You're going to use some designs. Okay, so with the help of design, you're trying to convey like what type of models are there, what type of designing is used, and depending on that designing, how you're converting that designing to the code. Clear? See, so this approach uses a language like a programming language with but more abstract features to specify the requirements by defining an operational model of the system. So this approach is now rarely used, although it can be useful for interfaces specification. So design description language is also one of the language where you're going to use only the designs to explain. Okay, you're going to use the designs to tell. Okay, so this is also one of the way, right? So we have one more way that is called as what a graphical notation, right? So we have one more way to explain that is called as a graphical notation. So what is graphical notations here? So supplemented by text annotations, and it is used to define the functional requirements for the system. So UML use case and sequence diagrams are commonly used. Now you may ask what is the difference between design language and what is the difference between graphical notations, right? So graphical notations are some of the notations like which use arrows and boxes and which will show the flow of data from one point to another point, okay? So what is the design description language here, where you are going to use a standard format of design, okay? So in design description language, we use a standard design, right? Standard formats of design. Clear to you? Graphical notations use some different types of diagrams, right? Then next is what a mathematical specification. So these notations are based on mathematical concepts, okay, such as a finite state machine or sets, okay. So using some mathematical language, right? So we use some mathematical type of specifications to explain the details in that documentation, right? So these are the different ways, okay guys, these are the different ways of writing a system requirement specification. So hope you are getting what I want to tell you, right? I wanted to tell you, so you might be knowing, right? You might be knowing that your friends are carrying one document, right? Which friends? Your final year friends, right? So there is one book which is called as a black book, okay? So what is that black book? That black book is nothing but SRS, okay? So in that black book, what they are going to include? They are going to include all the work that they have done throughout the semester, right? So in first thing they will include what? Introduction. So in introduction, they will talk about what is their software. They will talk about what is their project. Okay, and they will also include the details of what are the new advantages or what are the advantages of the new software and what are the disadvantages of the old software. Okay, so that is included in the introduction part, right? So after introduction, they will finalize what the system architecture, right? So they will finalize what is the software that they are going to use and they will finalize what is the hardware that they are going to use, right? So software in the sense they are going to finalize what is the front end, right? What is the size of RAM and what will be the size of memory consumed by your software. All these things are going to be included into the software. Then what comes into the hardware architecture? Everything about what part of hardware is required, right? So all these things are included in the hardware specification. So after that, they will go forward the designing and then the coding and then the testing, okay? And then the software evolution, right? So these are the basic things, right? So which are included, okay, in your SRS, right? So hope you are getting it. So see here, so in examination, they will mainly focus on SRS, okay? They will mainly focus on SRS and they may ask you for 5 marks, what are the different ways of writing this SRS, okay? Are you getting that? Now, suppose you are going to write one documentation with the help of natural language, right? Suppose we are using a natural language. So there are few disadvantages of using this type of language for creating the documentation. So what are those disadvantages? Sometimes lack of clarity, confusion in the requirements, and amalgamation. Okay. So what is amalgamation? Amalgamation means what? Bombarding of so many requirements, okay? Or so many requirements are combined together, which are unclear. That is called as amalgamation. So while you are talking in a natural language, there is no structure, isn't it? They are not following a structured way. They can tell the requirements in any of the way. They don't know like how to start serially. They may state the requirements unevenly, unorderly, right? So that's why there are some problems with the natural language. So when you collect the requirements and when you work on the requirements which are provided in the natural language by the customer, sometimes it becomes difficult to frame the coding for those kind of requirements. Why it becomes difficult to frame the coding for such type of requirements? Because sometimes the customer fails to provide us the clear information. Sometimes the customer himself may be confused while providing us the information. Sometimes he may give all the information in an unorderly manner. Hence, it is the responsibility of developer to sort that information, to clear that information, to remove the unnecessary information, and then to go for a correct set of requirements which will be converted into the system requirements, and later the designing, coding, implementation, testing, and all other activities are carried out on these requirements. So that is very, very important to have a clear set of information, to have a what I can say, to have a sorted or filtered requirement set. So I can say that there may be some problems when we collect the information in the natural language, or when we also include the information in the natural language in that document. Are you getting that? See, this is very important class, because depending on this, the other units are dependent, right? So depending on today's class, you will understand the other lectures also. So precision is difficult without making the document difficult to read. So lack of clarity means what? If you provide the requirement in a clear way, clear and simple way, then the reader will understand. If you make a confusion in writing the requirements or explaining the requirements, it will be very, very confused situation for the reader as well as for the developer. Okay. Functional and non-functional requirements tend to be mixed up. So user, when the customer is telling us about the requirements, the customer personally don't know about which requirements are functional and which are non-functional, isn't it? So it depends upon the developer to sort the requirements which are functional and the requirements which are non-functional. Okay. So requirement amalgamation, several different requirements may be expressed together. So what the customer may do, he may try to explain us so many requirements in one requirement set. Okay. Now let us consider one example here. Okay. So example for the requirements for insulin pump software system. Okay. So you have studied this system, isn't it? You know what are the functional requirements, and you also know what are the non-functional requirements of this software system. Okay. Now let me read it. The system shall measure the blood sugar and deliver insulin if required every 10 minutes, right? So this is what? This is nothing but a requirement. This is nothing but a user requirement. And how you are going to write the coding for this requirement, that will become a system requirement. It means you cannot play with this requirement. This is the condition which has to be implemented into the code, and they have see how they are explaining us. The system shall measure the blood sugar. It means you have to measure the blood sugar, okay, and deliver the insulin. So what our software has to do? The software has to take the blood samples and measure the blood sugar level, and it has to also deliver the insulin if required. There is a condition. It means first you are going to check the blood sugar, and if it is normal, then there is no need to give the insulin. If it is abnormal or daily dose is there, okay, if required. So this if required is our main condition here. So if required means what? If it is not normal, okay, or daily dose is there, all these constants comes under if required every 10 minutes. So this is the user requirement which is given to us by the user. It is the job of who? It is the job of our developer to take this if required. So here they have not given anything clear. If required, but when? If required means what exactly? Okay, see, changes in blood sugar are relatively slow, okay, or so more frequent measurement is unnecessary. So changes in blood sugar are relatively slow, so frequent measurement is unnecessary. Less frequent measurement would lead to unnecessarily high sugar levels. So what it means, these 10 minutes, sometimes it is needed to test in 10 minutes for every 10 minutes, sometimes it is not needed to do the test for every 10 minutes. Okay, so that's why this is a not structured format. There is some confusion in this. In this natural language statement, there are few confusions. It will not give us a complete idea that we have to do that for every 10 minutes. If required means what? Exactly. If required means what? Are you getting that? So that is the reason sometimes the natural language may create some different kinds of problems. Okay. So second requirement, second user requirement, the system shall run a self-test routine every minute with the conditions to be tested and the association actions defined in the table 1. So there is one table that I will show you in the next class. So what it means, a self-test routine can discover hardware and software problems and alert the user to fact the normal operation may be impossible. So here what it is going to tell, the user have given the requirements very ambiguously, means there are a lot of confusions in these kind of requirements, right? So here it is telling that the system shall run a self-test routine every minute along with the conditions. The system should run along with these type of conditions, okay? And it has to also take care of the hardware and the software, that if any problem is there, it has to give an alert and tell to the patient that there is some problem and you must immediately go to the doctor. So there are a lot of requirements combined in this. So it is this requirements, amalgamation as well as confusion. So there are a lot of requirements combined here. So this is the problem of the natural language. Sometimes the developer gets confused how to frame the system requirements for these kind of natural language. Okay, so this is one of the problem with the natural language. All right. Okay, so in today's session we'll stop here.